Today, Sylvie and I are in the Hertfordshire village of Codicote, which is situated in the central western area of the county, about 7 miles south of the town of Hitchin. A famous resident of the village is the pop star Kim Wilde, who was also married in the village church back in the 1990s. We're starting our walk from Heath Lane, which branches off from the high street near the centre of the village. A blue plaque on the wall of this house gives an interesting insight into its history. The lane goes downhill for about a mile until it reaches the river Mimram Valley, and it's here we come to a junction with the Kimpton road at a place called Codicote Bottom. We turn left at the junction at Codicote Bottom Farm. About 50 yards along the lane, we turn right and take a footpath which leads us through the farmyard. It's here we saw some pretty amazing vehicles as we passed through the farmyard. After we pass through the farmyard, the path takes us along a trackway leading us up the hill on the other side of the valley. And this path goes for almost a mile before we come to our next destination, the tiny hamlet of Ayot St. Lawrence. The country's been going through a heat wave for the past few weeks, and today was a really warm day, so Sylvie and I are heading straight for the village pub, and this is the very popular Brocket Arms. Back in the 1980s, the pub was used in a TV commercial, which was filmed right here in the yard. Another warm one. That looks good. That's a pint of Brocket. After a cool drink, we head off to view one of the village's attractions, the ruins of St Lawrence Church. The church ended up in ruins in the 1770s after a local landowner by the name of Sir Lionel Lye began tearing it down, as he said it spoiled his view from the manor house. He managed to destroy half the church before being ordered to stop by the Bishop of St Albans. It was never restored and has been in ruins ever since. We're now continuing through the village to see the home of Ayot St Lawrence's most famous resident, the playwright George Bernard Shaw. George Bernard Shaw lived here for almost 50 years and wrote most of his famous plays during that time. Guided tours around the house have to be pre-booked in advance, but we've only got time to walk around the gardens. A path going round the garden eventually brings us to his writing hut, and it was in here he wrote many of his works. Well, after our tour of Shaw's Corner, we continue along the lane to the edge of the village, and we're now going to see the village's other attraction, the new church of St Lawrence. To compensate the village for destroying their old church, Sir Lionel Lye built them a new one in a field just outside the village. This one, however, was built in the neoclassical style of a Greek temple, a style popular in the 1700s. Sir Lionel Lai was said to have had a very tempestuous marriage. He and his wife positively hated each other, and the new church was also their final resting place. He was buried at one end of the church, while she was buried at the opposite end, as they didn't want to be buried close to one another. We're now heading back into the village in order to pick up a footpath for the next leg of our walk. Another famous resident of the village was the golfer Nick Faldo, who used to live in this house opposite the ruined church. We make our way to the opposite end of the village, where we pass through the gates of Ayot House. And this used to be the home of the Lullingston Silk Farm, and it was here that silk was produced for gowns used in several royal events, including the Queen's coronation in 1953. We continue on down this path until it brings us to another large old house called Abbott's Hay. We then head out into open country. Halfway down this path, we come across some amazing sculptures carved out of old dead tree trunks. It looks like someone has brought Easter Island to the wilds of Hertfordshire. We follow this path for just over a mile before it brings us to a place called Kimpton Mill. And this was an old water mill situated on the River Mimram. We're now following the narrow lane beside the mill, and about 100 yards along here we turn onto a gravel trackway which leads us to a place called Rye End. And the trackway eventually brings us out onto the Whitwell road. We follow this lane for about a mile before it brings us to our next destination, the village of Whitwell. There was once 7 pubs in the village of Whitwell, but sadly only one remains, the Bull. Well, it's a really warm day.
Cheers!
Oh, looking forward to that. The beer garden is dominated by this massive apple tree, and I couldn't resist stuffing a few into my backpack. We're now heading through Whitwell village to view its popular attraction. As we're walking through the high street, I stopped to gaze at the veranda at this house, which had a grapevine all over it, with loads of lovely grapes. At the end of the village high street, we come to what Whitwell is famous for. It's Watercress Farm. And fresh springs bubble up out of the beds, making it perfect for watercress. And it's also the source of the River Mimram. Sadly, this year they didn't have any watercress for sale, and I'm wondering if it's due to the long drought we've had. Well, that was disappointing. I always stop in and buy cress from here when I'm in the area, as it's the best I've ever tasted. As Sylvie and I walk back through the village, I spot an unusual tree in someone's garden. This is what's known as a Judas tree, as it was from one of these that Judas Iscariot hung himself after betraying Jesus, and that's how the tree got its name, and they're quite rare in Britain. We're now heading back through the village using the road we came in on. This road will eventually take us back to Codicote, which is about 2 miles away. Well, about half a mile from Codicote we leave the road and take a footpath, which should get us to Codicote much quicker. Overall, this walk has taken us about 6 hours and covered over 10 miles. Anyway, we're looking forward to seeing you next time.